Hello, my name's Ian and I'm an alcoholic. Alcohol for me started off as a medicine, almost as a therapy. It really worked for me. It gave me a sense where I didn't have to think or care. So when I was a child, I felt like I never fitted in properly. I seemed to be always different from all the other children around me. I was quite sick when I was a baby, and I didn't feel like I connected to the other children. I always felt unwanted. I was told by my mum that I wasn't wanted, that she wished I hadn't been born, and that feeling went with me into my teenage years and into my adulthood. Always a sense of being disconnected or different. Throughout high school, I suffered bullying. I was beaten up most days of my high school years, so that certainly wasn't a happy time for me. Most of the time, I didn't provoke the other students who were doing the bullying, and my parents essentially blamed me, that I must be doing something to them to be beaten up like this. It got to a point where my dad started calling the police when I would come home injured from the other children at school. So my teenage years, I feel, were quite troubled, and I couldn't wait to get out of school. And I eventually got an apprenticeship which enabled me to escape from school, which I was very happy about. At the end of my teenage years, my father passed away. He was diagnosed with a terminal illness and died when I was 20 years old. That had a huge effect on me and on my family. You know, the shock of that really hit home. And that's where my drinking really kicked off. It really escalated. And also I started smoking marijuana daily. It was anything that could stop me thinking or feeling emotions. That's what I did. Drinking became a release for me. So where I didn't have to feel feelings or think about emotions, I could just drink and escape. It really became an escape for me. And I quickly noticed that I wasn't drinking like other people my age were drinking. You know, we would get drunk, but they wouldn't repeat the process over and over again. You know, they wouldn't have a drink for months afterwards, you know. But for me, it became an obsession. And it really gave me a no-care attitude. I used to be very concerned with what other people thought of me. Or when I drank, it really gave me a no-care attitude. And drinking enabled me to sweep emotions and feelings of rejection aside. Sweep all those negative issues under the carpet. And that's what I proceeded to do. Drinking gave me a lot of bravado, confidence. It was my escape from the negative of my childhood. So to start with, it was a medicine for me. But slowly but surely, things got worse and worse. and the consequences got worse and worse. Along with that, I didn't drink a lot to start with, but slowly but surely that increased, because the effect of the alcohol had little effect on me. The more I drank, the more I needed to drink. Towards the end of my drinking, I felt like I desperately needed to drink. And drinking, slowly but surely, it became an obsession, a mind obsession. And that obsession overruled all other ideas. When I knew it wouldn't be a good idea to drink, I still drank anyway. And when I knew that I shouldn't drink, I still drank anyway. The obsession to drink became all-powerful and overruled every other thought. It was like alcohol had stepped into my head and taken control. It certainly had me around the throat. I definitely feel like I was drinking against my will. I knew drinking was harming me, but I carried on anyway. And I couldn't understand this. Every other area of my life was fairly normal, but the drinking had become well and truly an established obsession. And I drank when I didn't want to drink. I just had to keep drinking. And hiding my drinking from family, from friends, from work colleagues, that had become my number one priority, is keeping hidden how much I was drinking. Because I was drinking more than most people. And not wanting my family or friends to know how abnormal my drinking had become. I wanted to self-isolate because other people, they got in the way of me drinking. So I pushed away almost all friends, and I pushed away my family. No one else in my family drinks alcohol, or if they do, it's very minimal. And I was ashamed of what I had become. And, countless times I would wake up hungover to the eyeballs, wondering, why have I done this again? And why have I punished myself like this? And I couldn't understand it. And eventually I found myself in prison. And that was a huge shock for me. Through driving offences, I was drink driving, even though I knew I shouldn't, but the obsession to drink was stronger, and going to prison quite literally scared the life out of me. I had grand ideas that I would be in low security, but that wasn't the case. And of course, once again, I swore off the drink. While I was in prison, I found there was no rehabilitation at all. The officers told us we were in there for punishment, not to rehabilitate. So when I was released from prison, I thought, because I had been off the alcohol for a little while, that I could go back to drinking normally. And I did go back to drinking, but slowly and surely I was drinking specifically to get drunk once again after the experience of going to prison, and the shame I felt for that was incredible. I felt like I'd let my family down again, and I'd done that many, many times. And the shame that goes along with alcoholism was grinding me down. But when I returned to drinking, things certainly didn't get worse. This is a progressive disease, and things progressively got worse and worse, and I drank more and more, even though I desperately didn't want to drink. And I could see that it was harming me physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. It was overtaking me, and I could see the harm that it was doing to me. However, I still continued to drink. I think for the next 10 years, I thought I could fix myself. I was certainly too proud to ask for help. And I thought that I had a lot of willpower and a strong willpower. And time and time again, I thought that I could eventually fix myself. I swore off the alcohol hundreds, if not thousands of times, honestly, and swore I would never drink again. But within a week or 2 weeks, I would find myself drunk. I went through the cycle of getting into some sort of strife through drinking, swearing off my drinking. I'd swear off drinking forever. And that forever would last anywhere between 20 minutes and 2 weeks. And after, a period of sobriety, a couple of weeks, I would get a false sense of wellness. I would feel better mentally, physically. The fog would begin to lift. And I would begin to think that I was okay and didn't have a problem. A false sense of healthiness, I guess you could say. And I would talk myself into another drink, that this time it would be different. And this time I would be able to control my drinking, as I saw other people around me doing. But that very, very rarely happened. And once I had one drink, it was like I always had to have another drink. It triggered off a craving that overruled all other rational thought. And I guess I thought that I could cure myself using willpower and using my own strength. And after I tried every way to stop drinking that didn't involve other people, because I was too proud to admit to anyone that I was alcoholic. I feel that I knew myself, I knew that I was alcoholic, and that's just through lived experience of trying to stop drinking but unable to stop. I would go over and over and around the cycle of swearing off booze, white-knuckling it for a couple of weeks, And by that I mean just trying to use my own willpower. The only thing that changed was I wasn't drinking. And during that 2 weeks, I would increasingly become agitated, and little things would agitate me, and frustrated with myself and frustrated with the rest of the world. And little by little, I would become more and more irritable. I found the further I got from my last drink, the more I could see the faults in others. And by the end of the 2 weeks, I'd become so agitated that I would say, "Oh, I need a drink." And so I would repeat the whole sorry process over and over again. And I went round and around in that cycle for probably close to 12 years. And that grinds you down. It wears you down. It gives you a sense of no self-worth. Eventually, I would cave in and drink. In June 2018, I drove while disqualified from driving. And this wasn't the first time I had done that. So I was facing an even longer prison sentence. And for me, that was rock bottom. That filled me with a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression, knowing that I had let everybody down again. A month or two after that episode, I finally put my pride down long enough to go to my doctor and ask for help. And for me, that was a big step. You know, I was as nervous as could be sitting in the doctor's waiting room. And I eventually said to my doctor, "I can't do this any longer. I need some sort of help. My drinking isn't just having a couple too many on the weekend. My drinking was destroying my life." And my doctor recommended seeing counsellors. He put me on a mental health care plan to see a psychologist. And ironically, he explained to me that in his younger years, he also had a problem with alcohol. The doctor also recommended giving Alcoholics Anonymous a try. And by this stage, I was so broken, I wanted to give anything a try. I knew I couldn't go on living as I was living. So I did give Alcoholics Anonymous a try. And thank God I did. I was very nervous heading into my first meeting. I arrived with 1 minute to spare, so I wouldn't have to talk to anyone before the meeting. But because I arrived at the last minute, the only seat available was front and centre, which is exactly where I didn't want to be. But when people started sharing, and when I heard other people's stories, they were essentially telling my story. I didn't know people felt the same way as I did. I truly felt I was all alone while I was drinking. But to hear other members of Alcoholics Anonymous tell my story, and they were very understanding, and they knew what this alcoholism game was all about. And so from that very first meeting, I met a man who was to become my sponsor. And he also had been through legal proceedings, so he knew where I was coming from. And I didn't want to use Alcoholics Anonymous as a get-out-of-jail-free card. I wanted this to be a lifelong, permanent solution for me. So within weeks, me and my sponsor launched into working AA's 12 steps. My sponsor said there was no reason to delay getting well and getting sober and recovering. So that's what we did. We launched into the steps, and I think the steps are a course of action. Just knowing the steps or reading about AA's program or believing AA's program for my kind of alcoholic wouldn't work. I needed to actually put the action in. And that wasn't necessarily easy. What I did need was a lot of honesty. And I wasn't honest with anyone, really, especially myself previously. I needed a lot of honesty and cut the crap and be real. I also needed to approach this way of living with an open mind. You know, I had always thought my way was the best way. Well, the way my life was, obviously my way wasn't working. So I had an open mind to approach Alcoholics Anonymous with maybe that their way will work for me. And of course I needed the willingness to work this program to the best of my ability and to work this program wholeheartedly. For me and my type of alcoholic, a half-assed effort just wasn't going to work. I needed to grab the bull by the horns and put my everything in to working this new way of life. So it turns out that desperation that I felt when I first started AA, that turned out to be a blessing, because that desperation was the kick up the backside I needed to work this program honestly and thoroughly. I've done a lot of things in my life that have been half-baked and haven't put myself completely into, but I feel that I've given everything I can to working the program of AA. At my very first meeting, I heard a man read, "If you follow this simple program, you need not drink again." And that's exactly what I wanted and needed, because I certainly felt like I needed to drink. And the miracle is, I haven't needed to drink since. AA has given me a peace of mind, which I certainly didn't have before. I was full of anxiety. My psychologist diagnosed me with high-scale anxiety, but the program of AA has given me a peace of mind. It's given me serenity. It's given me self-worth, a sense of calmness. Really, AA gives us a design for living, and that's clearly spelled out in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. It's simple, but not necessarily easy, but it's been more than worth it, because AA has given me my life back. Alcoholics Anonymous has rearranged my priorities and given me a sense of self-purpose and self-worth. And these days, now I'm able to help other alcoholics through sharing with what has worked for me and sharing the program of AA. So I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones that has gotten their life back. And I no longer need to drink. At first, AA helped me with my alcoholism, but these days, AA helps me with living a sober life. And, I've got self-respect now, and my family can't thank AA enough for what they have done for me. And AA has also given me a power that's higher than myself. A power that's much more powerful than me. So I'm a very grateful member of AA. I know it works if you work the program thoroughly. I haven't met anyone in AA who has needed to drink again who was working the program thoroughly and to the best of their ability. Not necessarily perfect, but to the best that they can do. And I'm a very grateful member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's been my experience. So thanks for listening.